welcome. I'm glad to see so many members and guests as well.
First, I want to welcome our visitors from the north, from the eclipse path of totality, and that would be DTM Tracy Baker and DTM, soon to be DTM Elizabeth Betsy Urban. Both of these fine folks are from the Dayton United Communicators, and they may also be members of other clubs. But thanks for showing up and contributing to our meeting today. So let's move on to our roles for today. First of all, the timer is going to be Betsy. Can you tell us about your role?
I'll be timing the meeting. I've got those backgrounds, but I gotta make sure they work. So I'll be holding green when it gets to 5 minutes, the speeches, and yellow when it gets to 6 minutes, and red when it gets to 7 minutes. And you time table topics and evaluations too, right? So the table topics are 1 to 2 minutes, and the evaluations are 2 to 3 minutes.
Fantastic, Betsy. I like the old school placards or notebook, green, yellow, red, instead of the electronic version myself. So thanks for doing that. If you get the
Did we confirm the number
Zoom
of
version
minutes
working?
for Tracy's speech?
Yeah, 6 to 8 minutes. Is that correct,
Okay.
Tracy? So Betsy, you'll be timing 6 to 8 minutes for Tracy's speech.
Yes.
If you get the electronic versions. Get the electronic versions working, that's okay as well. Let's move on to our word counter grammarian, and that's going to be DTM Janet Kassalen. Can you tell us about your role? Janet, you are, oh, I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Okay. There we go. I put it in the chat. The word of the day is imagination. And the definition is the act or power of forming a mental image of something not present to the senses or never before wholly perceived in reality. So the word of the day is imagination. And I will be counting the number of times our members or guests use the word of the day when it's their turn to speak. And also I will count the filler words like but, so, and I will give a report at the end of the meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you, Janet. So let me go ahead and introduce Tracy. The title of the speech today is My Life as a Sitcom Theme Song. This is from Pathways Visionary Communication, Level 1, Writing a Speech with Purpose, one of my favorite projects. I really enjoy that particular project. Introduction, DTM Tracy Baker is a 28-year, 5-time distinguished Toastmaster. He is a decorated United States Air Force veteran who loves music, movies, sports, fishing, and sunshine. That is in short supply these days. Hopefully we'll have some soon. He is a club growth director. He is the club growth director for District 40 and does PR for his home club, Dayton United Communicators, 1694. DTM Baker is on his level 1 of his 5th path visionary communication. As we mentioned, the project is Write a Speech with Purpose. The title, My Life is a Sitcom Theme Song. After his speech, he will lead a special version of Table Topics, or he'll be participating in the Table Topics. Obviously, Joy's going to be doing the Table Topics. Ladies and gentlemen, again, My Life is a Sitcom Theme Song. Tracy Baker, My Life is a Sitcom Theme Song.
All right. Fellow Toastmasters, the Addams family is something I was very familiar with growing up because this was a crazy family of kooky and crazy people that were having fun in their house. And I used to say to myself, Deshaun Ramey, area director, wow, is my family as crazy as the Addams family? Because we had a lot of imagination. We used to think about things, Elizabeth Irvin, about how our lives would be one day if we weren't so poor. Linda and Veronica, we grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and we were poor. And by poor, I'm not talking about just regular poor. I'm talking about as poor, not like different strokes, not like the Jeffersons. We were the good times poor. But that's okay because our imagination took us away from that poorness and that poverty into prosperity. But I had to get there, folks. And Jeff Club Coach, the way I did that was by using my imagination. So sit right back and you hear a tale for 6 to 8 minutes about how I was able to use my life as a television theme song to get to where I am today. And when I'm done, David Ash, you're going to say, wow, I need Tracy Baker to write me a theme song because we need to find a way to get through with our imagination. So fellow Toastmasters, I am going to start this tale by talking a little bit about a show that I really liked growing up. And it's called The Jeffersons. And the Jeffersons were in the situation I was in. They were poor, but they were moving on up to the east side in New York. And what they did was went from poverty to prosperity. That's point number one about how I use my life as a sitcom theme song. Moving on up. Fellow Toastmasters, we cannot be content with just staying where we are. We can't come into a program like Toastmasters and never develop and move on up in the rank and status in our where we are in our levels of speaking. We can't stay stagnant. So number one success coach, Joy Harris, is that we have to move on up. And the way to move on up is to give powerful, solid, incredible, entertaining speeches in Toastmasters on a regular basis. Now, show of hands, who's been stuck at their present level, whether it's pathways, whether it's level 4 or 5, who's been stuck here for a while? Who's been stuck at their, you've been stuck too long. Especially in a club like TV Toastmasters, you should be speaking a lot because the numbers are small. You should be moving on up to the level of level 5 and distinguished Toastmaster. So point number one is I want you all to move on up, and you have to find a way to not only move up, but to help your fellow person move up with you. So Veronica and Deshaun and David, make sure as you're giving speeches that you're asking Joy and Janet and Jeff to do the same thing, because together you can use your imagination and you can move on up. But it's not enough just to move on up, because you know, Betsy Irving can tell you right now, she's been a great area director, distinguished area director, but she can tell you that it's not always rainbow and sunshine, which is the second theme song about my life. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and then you have the facts of life. The facts of life. Oh my gosh, Tootie and Natalie and all these folks in Facts of Life, I used to watch that show and say, oh my gosh, can that be my girlfriend one day? But the simple fact of life is this, fellow Toastmasters, without imagination, you're not going anywhere. So you have to take the good and the bad. You have to find a way to use your imagination to overcome whatever has happened. When I was young, I used to get beat. Well, you can't tell now because I'm 6'2", strong power. I'm not as big as Deshaun Ramey, but I'm a big guy now. Nobody's going to do what they did to me and talk about me now. But back then, I was so scared and so afraid. Tracy's a girl's name, Tracy's a girl's name. And they would call me names. They would talk about my acne skin. And they would just do all kinds of things that would make me use my imagination to think about how life would be later in life. So you're going to have good and bad on this journey in Toastmasters, just like I did. The good will probably be your club will grow at some point. The bad is right now, you got to get a little bit more organized. You got to get a few more members, and you got to do it in such a way where people want to come to TV Toastmasters to be part of this wonderful experience, as opposed to who's doing what. I don't know what's happening. I don't know who's evaluating. I don't know if you're speaking today or next week. You got to get organized, fellow Toastmasters, because you have to take the good and the bad and put them together. And it's a fact of life that every Toastmasters group has to have some sort of power structure and some sort of energy, nuclear inside their own body to be able to build. Club coach can't do it. Success coach can't do it. You got to do it from within. So you got to take the good and you got to take the bad, and together you have the facts of life. Fellow Toastmasters, as you look at the facts of life, And as you listen to this tale, and as you sit there and think about your family, which is what you are, you have to stop and think, wow, how can we get through this by ourselves? And the answer is, fellow Toastmasters, you can't, because you got to have people in your corner to help you. And these people are called friends. And I'm not talking about the TV show Friends. What I'm talking about is point number 3. Thank you for being a friend. Travel up the road and back again. Your heart is pure. You're a pal and a confidant. You got to have friends on this journey, fellow Toastmasters. You got to have people you mentor and are mentored by, because that's what I didn't have growing up when my life was a sitcom theme song. I didn't have friends to be there for me and take me up and down the road. Instead, I had to do it by myself, and I was so scared and so afraid. But I realize now, as I'm a little bit older, a little bit wiser, that friends, how many of us have them? We have to have some friends along the way to help boost us to those levels of where we need to be. So you have to find a way to thank your friends for being a friend. And if you threw a party and invited everybody you knew, you would see the biggest gift would be for me, and the card attached would say, thank you for being a friend. So thank you all for being a friend of Toastmasters, and thank you all for using the power and energy and imagination that you have to inspire other people to write their own theme songs of their life, which is why I'm asking you all today, what is the television theme song that would fit your life? What is the television theme song that you can write for yourself, Veronica, to use as a metaphor or a literal sense of what your life is about and what you believe? Whatever that is, I hope that you can find it, and I hope that you can write it. And I hope that even if it's kooky and crazy as you use it to help propel you to the upper levels of whatever it is you want to do, whether it's Toastmasters or anywhere else. So with that being said, fellow Toastmasters, the world don't move to the beat of just one drum. What might be right for you may not be right for some, different strokes. And you got to make sure and understand, fellow Toastmasters, that sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. And that's why we cheer for each other as friends. So with that, fellow Toastmasters, I'm glad that I was able to go back in my history and listen and show you some of the things that I had to deal with when I was thinking about my theme songs in life. But my question to you is, are you going to go back and think about those old days? Because those were the days. What is your television theme song, and what song will you sing in your life? Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Tracy. You got to have a piece of the pie.
Oh my gosh.
Take 1 minute on the timer. Now we're going to turn it over to Joy Harris for Table Talks.
Thank you, Jeff. I'll have to say, I was so inspired by the theme song sitcom of someone's life. I'm going to pick it right back up where Tracy left off and ask each one of us what sitcom would define your life. So if you didn't expect that, I think I'll go first, even though I realized this TV show, I'm not even sure what the theme song for the actual show is, but the first thing that came into my mind was The Good Wife. And I'll say The Good Wife, not because I should get an award for being a good wife. I was a wife for 40 some years before I lost my husband, and most of you. But what I was and why that show resonates with me is really the premise of the show. The mother was a professional who went into the workplace and had a leadership position. She was an attorney, and she was a junior attorney and fighting for that senior attorney possible partnership. And yet she was raising I think she started out raising tweens and then teenagers. So if anyone knows, when they say they're going to have a baby, they need to realize they're also going to have teenagers. So teenagers will keep your life busy, whether you're a professional woman or not. But I would like to say that The Good Wife is a TV show that had a premise. Because I was all work for so many years in the business workplace, and I was a very conscientious homeschool mother as well. So I will go with the Good Wife, and I think we could see what David Ash, do you resonate with a sitcom theme song or the premise of a TV show? And if you could use your imagination like our speaker did, you'll be doing very well.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. I guess I can do that. I was actually planning to go there a little bit in my evaluation, and we're kind of mixing up the order here a little bit. So I'm now feeling just a bit discombobulated by the question. Let me just think, because I actually wanted to mention not so much sitcom theme songs, but a number of other theme songs. Let's say from various 70s and 80s TV shows, and I guess I tended to be inspired by a bunch of them. I'm a guy, but I was inspired by both by both male and male and female superheroes. So let's say I have a tendency to listen on YouTube. Maybe I even waste too much time just listening to old theme songs. I love them. So I'm going to say, and it's maybe silly and corny, but I'm going to mention both the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman as theme songs that I really love from the 70s that I sometimes go back to and listen to. I guess partly it is about the fantasy of being some kind of a superhero, which I would really love to be. I don't have those superhero powers myself, but I love watching them and being inspired. And then there's also the little bit of a thing with the well, to some extent with the $6 Million Man, but also the Bionic Woman, that the Bionic Woman had a kind of a major skydiving injury, which caused her to become the Bionic Woman, and that I sort of resonate a little bit with that as well, because I've had some scary moments as a skydiver too. So those are my favorite theme songs. I'm going to say more about it in the evaluation. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, David. I think you really pulled that out of your imagination, but maybe it's pretty close to you to think of those superheroes. So I'm going to ask the same question. And Janet, could you tell us of any TV show premise, plot, or theme song that resonates with you even after all these years? An old show or a current show, doesn't matter.
Thank you, Joy. I thought about the theme of sitcoms, but I decided I would use tonight a children's book. It's called Inch by Inch, The Garden Song by David Vaught. He's the person who wrote the book and the song. And I'll read part of the words to the song so you'll understand my sitcom. Inch by inch, row by row, gotta make this garden grow. All it takes is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. Inch by inch, row by row, someone bless these seeds I sow, someone warn them from below till the rain comes tumbling down. And so anyway, I'm kind of growing in my life. So I was thinking of the garden theme. Also, I have some pictures. I don't know if you can see, that's a banana plant.
Oh, we can see that.
Okay. That's a bunch of leaves on my avocado tree. Just a mixture of plants in our sunroom window. So anyway, as you can see, I have some plants and some trees, inspired, some of the plants were inspired by a Toastmaster of another club. So it pays to belong to Toastmasters to get motivated to do new things and to use our imagination to grow our lives. And so my sitcom is the song by David Malott, Inch by Inch, the Garden Song.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you. And as the author of children's books, I'm not surprised that you resonated with a song by another children's book author. Very nice, very nice. Well, let's move on to Veronica. Could you tell us, just use your imagination for any TV show or TV show theme song that inspires you and helps you use your imagination?
Thank you very much, Table Topics Master and President. I would say that Star Trek was one of the movies that or TV shows that I was really enthralled by. A lot of the shows that were around when I was growing up portrayed a very normal family, which I didn't come from. I came from divorced parents, which was highly unusual at the time. And I will say that both the Addams Family, as Tracy Baker had said, but also Star Trek gave me fair rein for my imagination, which really needed some space. And seemed to me like everybody had equal roles. They were all equally important, regardless of gender or and ethnicity, any of it. It was all equal power. It was positional, I guess, based upon training, etc. And I will also say that with the Addams Family, the sense of humor, particularly Morticia, and I really like the quote from Morticia when she's telling her husband Gomez. She says, "Don't beat yourself up, darling. That's my job." Back to you, Madam Table Topics Master.
I love that, Veronica. You pulled that out of your imagination, I am sure. All right, I think I have time for at least one more. So, Dave Delahanty, I know that in your imagination, you've been able to think of a TV show, a sitcom theme song. Tell us what came out of your imagination when you heard us all speak about this topic.
I think the theme song from the Andy Griffith Show, with him whistling, going down in, and Opie throws that rock in the creek. That goes back to, way back in the old days, I guess you might call them now, and where times was more relaxed and people actually got to know each other better, and also like the neighbors. And it was a pretty funny show. I think with some of the topics they covered in there, or some of the shows, I thought they were kind of funny, especially when I think the funniest one is when Barney Fife got shot, and he's supposed to have been sick, and they got around town by the women on the phone, and by the time it got back to him, he was dead. So I kind of like that one because it seemed like life was a lot more simpler back then. And back to you, Toastmaster.
That makes sense, David. That really makes sense. I do remember that show, and I remember the whistling song. I don't remember that episode. I do remember some of the episodes practically word for word. I had seen them so many times as a child, and then my husband and I watched that show for a while. So you're right. It's a really good show. Now there's two of us.
I like that lady with the deep voice. You ever, lady I'm talking about?
One of Aunt Bee's friends.
That was Barney. I think it was supposed to be Barney Fight's girlfriend at one time. one episodes.
Well, they really had good character development on that show. So you're right, a simpler time, but a lot of story told in that 30-minute segment. A lot of story.
Yeah.
Now, do I have time for more, or should I wrap it up?
Let's do one more.
All right. Well, Betsy, do you want me to time you or can you time yourself?
I guess I can time myself.
Okay, so I was going to ask you the same question. TV show, sitcom theme, inspiration.
Well, I like songs. So I probably like almost all the TV songs. But one song that came to my mind that I think kind of describes me is the Beverly Hillbillies. Because, that song, there was an old man named Jed, barely kept his family fed. Then one day he was looking up food and up to the ground came a tumbling crude and the rest is history. They were just kind of silly and happy. We gave my son a CD, or I don't know, we bought a CD or DVD of Beverly Hillbillies, and and my and we listened to it all the way to Florida and back, the Beverly Hillbillies. So, but it's sometimes you're down on your luck, sometimes it's raining, but the Mayflowers come up and things turn up, and Toastmasters is a great way to help turn your life around. So I appreciate it. And back to you.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. The story of the Beverly Hillbillies is almost like a moving on up story where they really had a pretty small awareness of their back in the hills, where they lived in their log cabin back in the hills, and their eyes wide open when they get to Beverly Hills and see movie stars, swimming pools, and the whole thing. So that was a good one. That was really a good one. Well, I've appreciated the time that we took to talk about how we've been inspired by TV shows, sitcom themes, and I would like to say that our guest really incorporated a lot of those themes into one presentation. So I love that quite a bit. All right, so I'm going to say back to you, Jeff, the Toastmaster.
All right, I'll tell you, it was worth hearing Betsy sing the theme to Beverly Hillbillies. That she gets the award tonight. She's the only one that actually sang the theme song, and
nice.
Oil, that is. I'm right. Now, does Tracy? Did you have some table topics that you were doing as well? I'm a little confused. Or was this actually the theme?
Those were great table topics. I have none to add. Sorry for the confusion.
That's all right. You did enough singing earlier, so you're excused. All right, let's move on to our evaluation portion of the meeting. And that is going to be David Ash is our general evaluator. David, take it over.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. And I believe that I will first be evaluating Tracy with regard to his speech, and then moving on to the general evaluation. Is that what you want me to do? How do you want me to proceed exactly?
Sounds good to me. A general evaluator typically will introduce the evaluator, so you can shake your own hand and take it away.
Okay. So yes. So as general evaluator, I introduce myself as Tracy's evaluator, and then I can come back and give an evaluation for the entire meeting as well. I won't be able to evaluate myself, but anyway, enough about that. So great speech, Tracy. I was really, really inspired by your speech. And I thought there were a lot of things that you did really well. I may have a couple of suggestions, but I really thought it was an amazing speech. So I'm going to talk about a number of things I thought went really, really well. One technique in particular, which I really loved about your speech, Tracy, is that you used a lot of people's names. You mentioned you established rapport with your audience by using names. And this reminds me, I know in Dale Carnegie's book about how to win friends and influence people, he mentions that using someone's name, it's the first it's usually the word that everyone loves the most is their own name. And so you repeatedly mention people's names to establish that that rapport, which I thought was really good. And I think it's something that we can do. It's easier to do in a Zoom call because we have the names, but we should do it in in-person meetings as well. Another thing that I thought was really, really good is that you were really excited about your topic. You were enthusiastic, and you definitely brought us in very early on with your enthusiasm, with your excitement about the topic. It was and I thought it was very imaginative too. You showed imagination in how you presented your ideas, which I thought was really, really good. Another thing which I thought was excellent, and it's something that is difficult to do well in in this format, but I thought you did it really well, is using hand gestures. I don't know if you were standing or whatever, but you were well positioned to use good hand gestures so we could see your hands, and I think the hand gestures were appropriate and were visible. And it's something I've done a little bit myself in speeches when I'm from home, but I'm not doing it today. And maybe I need to do it more. It reminded me a lot of how great hand gestures also established our rapport with the audience. So also a lot of good eye contact. I did not think there was a lot of use of notes. So I think that also was really good. A couple suggestions that I might make. One would be the overall message of the speech. Was it inspiring us? Obviously, you were inspiring us to move on up, to be moving on up, and you were obviously inspired by that theme song from the Jeffersons, which I also recall, which also inspires me. It was sometimes not clear which inspiring us just to move on up within Toastmasters or in life in general. And I think it was a little bit of both, but maybe a little bit more about kind of explaining the overall message there as to which it was. So you did talk a bit about Toastmasters and how don't stay stuck at one level, but I think it also applies to life in general. So maybe that point could have been made a little bit stronger. And I also thought that the maybe a bit more organization on the speech would have helped though. But I thought there was great enthusiasm. There was great. The opening was also really, really good. You kind of pulled us in really quickly and held our attention for the whole speech. And anything else I need to add here? Yeah, and one last point that I'll make to close off my evaluation. I thought in particular, I've already mentioned the hand gestures were good, but I'm going to mention one thing in particular was the hand gestures that were very good, that I really loved. Is that you showed the emotional state that you were in different stages of your life. Like you're talking about how you're a confident a man now, but as a little kid, you were maybe a little more scared, a little more timid, and you used the right hand gesture to show that. You kind of covered your face or whatever to show that. And that was really, really effective. It definitely captured that emotional state. So I thought great speech, very inspiring, and it's inspiring us to move on up, both in Toastmasters and in life in general. And for me, I'm more inspired maybe by action adventure theme songs, but sitcom theme songs are great too. Thank you, and back to you. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator. Do you want me to give the general evaluation now, or is that going to be a bit later on?
As general evaluator, I think you're going to call on your evaluation team. So that would be the grammarian, counter, then the timer, and then you'll give an overall evaluation.
Okay. So let me then turn it over to let me just check here.
I think it's going to be Janet the grammarian and Betsy's
got it now. Yeah. So Janet, would you be up for giving the grammarian report now?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. I might have missed the number of times you said the word imagination. It was used quite a bit during the meeting today. Jeff used it at least once. Joy about 5 times. Tracy 7. David 2. Myself 1. Veronica round 1, and Dave probably should have, not sure. And as far as and Betsy used it also. Let's see. And then as far as the ahs, ums, and other filler type words, let's see. I caught 1 by Joy, about 7 ahs by David Ash, 1 and 1 and from Veronica, 1 by Dave Delahoney, and for Betsy, you had a couple, or I don't know, just minor. So we'll thank everyone for the imagination you used during the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Grammarian. Now I'd like to call on our timer of the day, and that would be Betsy, to give the timers report.
Okay, thank you, David. Tracy's talk was 8 minutes and 17 seconds, or is that right? Yeah. Joy was 155. David's table topic was 143. Jim, or Jen. Jim? Is there a Jim?
Janet,
Janet, that's supposed to be an A. Janet was 2 minutes and 19 seconds. Sorry about that. Veronica was just a little over a minute, as was the other David. Back to you, General Evaluator.
Thank you, Betsy. And now I'll proceed with the General Evaluator's report. And I know there's been some talk in this club about spicing up our meetings a little bit, and I thought we did a really good job of that today. Definitely had an interesting approach to table topics, a great speech by Tracy. So I thought overall we had a really good meeting. The only comment that I will make as general evaluator, I'm ordinarily a general evaluator would evaluate the evaluators. Since I was the only evaluator, I can't really do that in an unbiased way. So that is what it is. The agenda was a little bit seemed a little bit discombobulated, and so it resulted in a little bit of a confusion on my part, and I apologize, perhaps even as general evaluator, I may not have been quite on that, but I was partly relying on the meeting agenda, and it was a little bit off. Like, for example, I did not know that I was going to be both general evaluator and an evaluator for Tracy's speech, and I guess there was a little bit of confusion on that. So it's actually a good thing that I happen to have the evaluation forms right in front of me, so I could pull one out when and do the evaluation when asked to do that. So that was good. It worked out fine, but it might be good to know to have that a little bit better scoped out in advance. But at the same time, I also recognize that we are trying to mix and match and kind of change up the format of the meetings a little bit, and that's probably the reason why there was a little bit of confusion on that. So I do understand that the reason for that, but I think the main comment that I would have is the agenda should match what's expected at the meeting. I think it was just a little bit off. The other thing I noticed about the agenda is that somehow Tracy was down on there for something like a 27-minute speech, according to the agenda, and it turned out to be 6 to 8 minutes. So again, just a little bit of confusion there. But overall, I think that stuff needs to be tightened up just a bit. But I recognize that we are trying to change things up a bit, so I understand. And back to you, Mr.
Thank you, David. Great job as general evaluator. I only have one point of order, and I'll turn it back to the president. And that is, I just put a link in the chat. We are looking at tentatively doing a debate-themed meeting for Saturday, May 18th. Depending on how quickly it comes together, it could be June or July. But I'm looking at May 18th at the moment. And the survey, it's just 2 questions. It'll take you 30 seconds. Just click on it and do it after the meeting, obviously. But click on it before the meeting closes and take that survey. And that'll give us a sense of maybe what topics and what interest level people have. That's it. I will turn it back to our president, Joy Harris.
thank you, Jeff. It is a true fact that we're trying to mix it up a little bit. When I listen to the feedback from my speeches have tended to be very dry. They don't have the enthusiasm that we saw tonight, and I often see when I visit other clubs. So I have on my agenda to make our meetings a little different, to change it up a little bit, and it all worked out. And because we're all always willing to jump in and be the timer or come up with a word at the last minute or even do table topics even at the last minute, miraculously, it does tend to work out. So I thought it worked out very well tonight. And I was extremely pleased with our guest tonight who spoke to us and sang to us all of the theme songs. And they brought back the memories of those sitcoms. And I really enjoyed that. I will say that I wanted to just talk a little bit, since we have the time. Many of my friends say, why do you spend so much time creating 5-minute presentations? When I ask you what you're doing, you're always working on they don't know, a 5 to 7 minute presentation. And I tell them my answer. I tell them why I do that. But what I've found is that Toastmasters in general have fallen into a couple of different categories. And one of them is that many Toastmasters are writing a book, or they have written a book, and they soon realize that they're going to need to be a public speaker, whether it is the confidence and the nerve to get up and read a little bit from their book, or whether it's to answer the Q&A section. Book signing and book reading is a very important part of public speaking. It also, our team members seem to fall into the category of wanting more clout at work. And it could be, I'm not talking about the conference room and the boardroom. I'm just talking about speaking up when it's necessary, or supporting someone else's opinion, but coming at it with the right tonal quality, so that you don't alienate anyone, you don't push anyone out of the way. Many people come to Toastmasters clubs to have a little more clout at work. And then the third grouping that many people fall into is to have a safe space to practice public speaking. And that's exactly what we do here, and that's exactly who we are. Because we have a virtual club that can also watch ourselves grow on YouTube, we can see our speech the next day on YouTube, or in a few days, whenever it gets promoted to YouTube. But we can also go back and see how we spoke 2 months ago to see if we have improved. And we can watch that eye contact and the hand gestures. You know, we can literally help ourselves get better by being a virtual club that records and promotes their club meetings. So I'd like to tell people that Toastmasters helps us think on our feet, and that we did tonight with the table topics. And it also helps us learn how to do prepared work. When you know you're coming to give a 5 to 7 minute speech, you're writing that speech, you're practicing that speech, and in some cases creating slides to support that speech. So we really work on the various projects that are in our pathways. And then we also have an opportunity through Toastmasters clubs to create feedback for others and then react to feedback. So as I said, I have redone some of my speeches based on feedback that I got, and some of it was to lighten up. And so I do have to be reminded to have a little bit of enthusiasm in my speeches, since I have tended to be dry in the past. So that is something I'm working on. But because of that, I do have a grin for us today, and then we'll see if we have any comments. But my grin for today is I've already claimed to be a good wife. I don't know what my husband would say about that. We were married successfully over 40 years, but I did, anytime that it stormed, I would say, moose are falling from the sky. And my husband would say, no, it's reindeer.